right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of the podcast, the first annual Idiots in the I Form NFL Awards, where we go
Oh,
through a few different categories and pick either the top three best at the position or specific players for awards we thought of. Get this thing rolling. Let's go with quarterbacks. We've all had a pretty lengthy discussion here for the past couple days about it. Paulo,
yeah, which honestly could have been a podcast episode in and of its own because we were on this for like 2 hours yesterday or the day before.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
for the way the first three awards are going to work is there will be a gold, silver, and a bronze for these positions. For gold, we believe though Tua is the top quarterback based on yardage, we're giving this one to Lamar Jackson. And Paulo, would you like to take this one for why Lamar gets the gold?
Yes, I will. For starters, he had a better season than his 2019 MVP season. So there's that. 4,500 about total yards if you add his 800 plus rushing yards. And besides all that, the Ravens as a team obviously did really good this year. The number one team in the AFC this year and made the AFC championship even if it didn't go their way. And I think that of all the teams, that if you take out their quarterback and tried to plug another one in, the Ravens need Lamar more than a lot of teams need their quarterback. If you took if you took Tua out of Miami, for instance, but you put in like Josh Allen, the Miami Dolphins are still an elite team. But the way that the Ravens are set up, Lamar is just he's necessary, and so all those wins more so than or not more so, but in a different way than other teams. Like those wins for the Ravens are because of Lamar. Like when he plays good, the team will win.
Yep.
And I don't know. There's just he didn't make very many mistakes. He had a couple fumbles, and he threw a couple picks earlier in the season. But just as the season went on, he just got better and better.
Yeah. One thing we also have to look at here is the touchdown and interceptions for some of these quarterbacks. Tua had 29 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. Lamar only had 24 touchdowns, but 7 interceptions. Lamar also, even though the rankings here only show their passing yards, if you add in Lamar's rushing yards in addition to that, it brings him pretty close to Tua. And I believe, Chris, did you get the math on that?
Yes. So, Lamar Jackson, rushing wise, he finished the season with 148 attempts for 821 yards, 5 touchdowns, and his longest carry was 30 yards. Go
Mm-hmm.
figure. So that just really adds on to why he is all winner for this year's award for the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think actually you know what? I forgot what I was gonna say. Continue.
Oh,
Well, that pretty much explains why we think Lamar takes the gold for this. As for silver, I think I can handle this one. I believe we're giving this one to Dak Prescott from the Cowboys.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, oddly enough, Dak has a slightly higher completion percentage than someone like Tua. He has similar amount of yards, only 9 interceptions compared to Tua's 14, and 36 touchdown passes. Dak has surprisingly performed very, very well this year. I don't know what got into him in the playoffs. That's a discussion for a different day. But for the regular season, which is what we're basing these off of, Dak deserves the silver medal here. And moving on to bronze, Will, I'm going to let you take this one. Is Will even
Is
here?
he on?
Hello?
I have no
To be
idea.
honest, I don't know who the bronze is in this one.
Oh, it's
I don't even know if
CJ.
I'm here.
Oh my
Is
god.
that what we discussed? Is that what we
It
agreed
is.
upon?
Yes.
That's what that was
I
majority rule.
just wanted you to hear you say it. It just feels good, right? A Texans quarterback after all of these years, being in the talks. Yes, it's just amongst us, but still being in the talks as one of the top 3 quarterbacks, in our opinion, in the league this year, especially as a rookie, is just that feels great.
Now,
But yes, even though he missed 2 games this season due to concussion there later in the season, he still managed to throw for 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions in the 15 games he started.
mhm,
So, I mean, for a rookie to put up only 5 interceptions, I mean, you have veterans of 5+ years that are throwing 10 plus 10 plus interceptions in a season. So, I mean, that's just insane to see
yeah.
those kind of stats
Despite
from
despite
a
playing
rookie.
2 less games than most of the
Yeah.
other quarterbacks here, he still had similar yardage, less interceptions, and similar amount of touchdown passes.
Yeah, and like we said, this is we're not dismissing the bad games. I mean, everyone
No.
remembers the terrible Jets game of 91 yards passing and no touchdowns and no interceptions though. So no interceptions. All right. Still he had rough games, right? 140 against Carolina. Like that's the second terrible game. So we're not dismissing that, but in our opinion, like we discussed, is just the season he put up as a rookie, as the number 2 quarterback being drafted, under Bryce Young, and to put up those numbers is just phenomenal. And in my opinion, could be the rookie of the year. He has all rights to win that, but I mean, there's other rookies in this class that were just phenomenal offensively, like Uka Laporta, which we'll get into later, but he makes his case to be offensive rookie of the year for sure, no doubt, in my mind, and I mean even across the league, especially after his playoff run that he had, very short-lived, right? But still, you did it. You took them back to what they were 5 years ago.
Yeah. And even aside from the stats, like I hear what you're saying about the 1 or 2 bad games. Like I'd say all of our top 3 quarterbacks had 1 or 2 bad games. But
Oh, for
even
sure,
still, like
for
most
sure.
quarterbacks have more than 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And yeah, and like we were talking about the other day, it's aside from all the stats, it's in the regular season at least what this is based off of, just showing up in the big moments and doing what you need to do when you need to do it, even if it doesn't look pretty on the stat sheet. Like if you do what you need to do to get your team the win, then that's a whole nother thing.
Yep.
because a
Yeah.
win's a win, right? I mean, that's what it all boils down to.
And
And the win is what you can do is get your team those wins. And I mean, the number of records he broke as a rookie. I mean, most completions or pass attempts without an interception, right? The fewest receptions matching some of the veterans that are in the league and in the past, passing yards against guys like Andrew Luck and stuff from the past. I mean, to do that with a Texans team as is in a rebuilding process, I mean, that's why we put him in that bronze slot.
yeah. And what you were saying about a couple bad games here and there, none of the quarterbacks on this list that I'm looking at in the top 10, not a single one of them did not have at least one bad game this season. Everybody had their ups and downs, but still, these are who we think deserve these awards based on what we're looking at here. But that will take care of the quarterback category. Let's move on to running backs for this season. It should be obvious who's getting the gold in this. The obvious best running back in the league right now is Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, easily, hands down.
1,459 yards,
Yeah.
14 touchdowns. His longest was 72 yards, averaging 5.4 yards a carry and 91.2 yards a game. It speaks for itself compared to some of the others on here. But second place, Will has seen this guy's work for the majority of the year. He's the one who made the argument for putting him at the silver position. Will, why did we choose Kyron Williams?
So Kyron, who only played 12 games, let's throw that out there first. Out of a 17-game season, played 12 due to injury. Not being a starter at all last year, just stepping up this year into that starting role. No one had high hopes for the Rams to begin this season, right? And this kid comes in here and looks phenomenal, putting up insane numbers. If he'd have played 17 full games, there's no doubt in my mind, based on his week-to-week performance, that he could have matched, if not surpassed, McCaffrey in total yards. Even though McCaffrey gets a lot of backfield work, Kieran's groundwork and also pass game is very similar to McCaffrey's. So from the rush to passing out of the backfield, he put up numbers, insane numbers. I mean, first week back off of IR, put up over 100 yards on the ground, and then I think close to another 100 through the air, and multiple touchdowns in multiple games week in and week out.
Yeah, it based and for those of you at home that don't have this list pulled up, the next closest one here, ranked number 2 on this list, is Derrick Henry, who had 1,167 yards. Now, like Will said, Kyron Williams only played 12 games compared to Henry's 17. But Kyron Williams has 1,144 yards, which is why Will was saying if he played the full time, he would be most likely about even with McCaffrey. And for the bronze award here, Paulo, Chris, whichever one of y'all want to take this, I believe we said we are going with James Cook from Buffalo.
We chose James Cook for this one because he was an underrated back that kind of like just quietly performed very well. Like honestly, he kind of snuck underneath my nose because I wasn't really focused on him the entire season. But yeah, he finished his year with 1,122 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He's had quite a few lengthy 20-plus yard run carries throughout this entire season, and he's done phenomenal. And even playing a full season, and that's why we gave him the 3rd place because he kind of exceeded our expectations this season to a degree.
It feels like he came out of nowhere, essentially.
So it kind of just blew my mind when I saw his stats end of year stats. I was like, wow, that's actually shocking. He actually did better than James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris. Although let's be frank, Najee Harris wasn't all that great this year.
I'm surprised Najee's that high on this list, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, Najee had a slow start, but he got it together like halfway through the season. It still wasn't like crazy numbers or anything, but he was more efficient like in the second half.
Yeah. So congratulations, James Cook. You got yourself 3rd place in Idiots in the I formation.
Yay.
I think the misleading thing with him, real quick though, is like we look at his stats and you're like, man, 1,100 yards. What's that touchdown? 2. Like everyone's gonna stop there and think, man, two touchdowns. But we also got to remember, like with this offense, major passing offense, and you got Diggs, Kincaid, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, major. But at the same time, you have a quarterback who rushes a lot and had a high number of rushing touchdowns himself. So a lot of those plays that could have been touchdowns for him got taken away by Josh Allen. Like easily could have handed James Cook the ball, but Allen decides, I'm gonna keep this one for myself down in
Yeah.
that red zone. So it's very misleading. It's not high on touchdowns, but 1,100 yards is still a feat in itself, right there
Yep.
behind Henry and McCaffrey and Williams. So no, definitely went under the radar. I think due to that touchdown, that his number of touchdowns he had.
Yeah. I think with McCaffrey, most of us, if not all of us, expected him to be the best back in the league this year, assuming he wasn't injured. But I think what elevates Kyron Williams and James Cook, at least for me, is that I had no expectations for either of them. I was thinking the Bills would have no run game. I was thinking the Rams were just like in a rebuild or whatever, but then the run game popped off and they still ended up being toward the top of the backs for this year, which is even more impressive than just someone meeting their, what you'd think they would do.
Yeah, because I think at this point, on year-to-year basis, as long as McCaffrey is healthy, right? I think everyone just kind of expects him to be number one, if not number two every year. Like it's kind of one of those things, like year in year out, as long as he's in the league. But like you said, I mean, especially with James Cook, he's ran in the past, but like for Kyron, just his stats real quick for last year: 35 attempts for the whole season, 139 yards total, and 0 touchdowns. So to go from that to the season he had is just insane, right? It's just a major turnaround that you hardly ever see in any kind of player at all. To go from nothing to just an absolute star the very next season. It's
Yeah.
usually the other
Yeah.
way around, where like they have a great season one and then season two kind of just drops off.
Yeah, like Damian Pierce.
Major, hey,
Hey,
it's
we're
true.
we're getting to
Those
that.
injuries,
We're getting to that later.
injuries are killer, but it's just our opinions on these again, guys. Like that's all this is.
One quick comment in regards to Derrick Henry. It's kind of piggybacking off what Will was saying. So like we all expected Christian McCaffrey to be the best back, obviously. Look at the stats; it just proves it for you. For me personally, I thought Derrick Henry would be the number 2 spot, even before this season, because when you think of Derrick Henry, you think, oh yeah, power back, just strong running back. He's always performing well. This year was kind of like a down year. Injuries have been kind of plaguing him lately, so that's why we had to drop him down from our list of winners this year. But even though on the official list that we see, that you may see on your screen or what we're looking at, it may show him as number 2. But let's be honest, folks, he's kind of lost his touch a little bit. Maybe not
It's
completely.
it's like we were
But
saying with Kyron Williams. If he only played those 12 games, if he played the full 17 like Henry did, Henry would be at least 3 on this
yeah,
list.
Yeah.
so I guess
We
better
were
luck next time.
talking, yeah, we were talking at the beginning of the season as well about how the Titans O-line wasn't expected to be very good. So
Yes.
that did not do him any favors. And he split
Yeah.
carries with I can't
Tajay
remember.
Tajay
Tajay
Spears.
Spears, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But Henry, he could very well be on the list next year because he's gonna be leaving Tennessee, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll
It'll be
see.
very interesting to see where he goes. But that takes care of our running back awards here. But let's move on to receivers. And it, again, just like with McCaffrey, it's kind of not really a that big of a contest for who should get first here. Uh, Gold medal goes to Tyreek Hill from the Miami Dolphins. Will, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take Tyreek Hill. I mean, he started off the season hot, and I mean he does every year though. Like he definitely had down games against some of the teams that you figured he would. But even against some of the ones that are you would expect him to go off, he still didn't have big games. I mean, 40 yards against New England, 60, 61 against Tennessee. Like those are a couple games in my mind. Like you expect them to go off against those teams. But even with that and him missing, he did miss a week or two, I believe. He still ended up putting up 1799. Like 200 from 2K yards and had 13 touchdowns on the season and his longest of 78. So I mean, he is putting up insane. He put up insane numbers this year. You know, getting close to those records. Even broke a few. But I mean, just a hell of a season from start to finish. Uh, I mean, what more can you ask for? I mean, the man's quick. He can run routes. Like once he beats your coverage like up close, if he can get behind the defense, I mean, it shows week in and week out. Like there's not much you're gonna do. We saw it in KC. You know, everyone was concerned when he went to Miami, and he still performed in Miami with Tua because everyone's concern was Tua. Like, you went from Mahomes to this, right? Like, there's no way you're gonna perform in first 2 seasons there, and this is what he's doing, almost 2K yards in a season. So I mean, no contest whatsoever for him to take the gold out of the receivers whatsoever. I mean, his stats from last year: same number of receptions, 89 more yards, and 6 more touchdowns from a year ago. So I mean, just still big numbers back to back years. And I mean, his biggest thing is just touchdown increase from last year.
Yeah. And as far as our silver award for this one goes, I think we decided to give this one to CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Similar stats to Tyreek Hill. He had 1,749 yards. He had a few more receptions, and similar for his average. And the main difference here I'm seeing is his longest reception was 92 yards.
Yep, I remember that play.
Yeah.
That was a big play.
Same.
He averaged very similar to Tyreek in average yards per game as well. Tyreek averaged 112.4. CeeDee Lamb averaged 102.9, which they are the only two on this list that average over 100 yards a game. It's odd to see that this is twice now that a Cowboy has gotten silver in these.
Especially from this
Yeah.
group. Especially from this group. Let's just throw that out. Not
Yeah.
just the Cowboys, like as a whole, but just like within this group itself. Like to see that, especially with Paulo over here, who just despises the Cowboys and disgust for 2 Cowboys to make the list so far.
Yeah, well, it's one of those
Props
things
to
where
us. Props to us.
it's not the Cowboys themselves. It's just all the stuff that comes with it. Like arrogant fans and incompetent like coaching and management that's kind of annoying to see. It's not necessarily the players that bother me. But it's in CeeDee Lamb's case, like if he's there so Dak can be there. Like if CD wasn't on this list, then Dak wouldn't be on this list because Dak needed that dude, and CD
Yeah.
is that dude. A couple years ago, when they traded Amari Cooper, they were talking about, oh, maybe they just made a big mistake because Amari Cooper is a great receiver. And CD, has filled into that number one role pretty well. There was a game or two, this season and a couple last year when people were like, "Oh, I bet they miss Amari Cooper right now." But broad strokes terms, like most of the time, like CD is that guy, and they don't like. I'm sure they do miss Amari Cooper, but you know, if it was
Yeah.
time for him to go, so
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and by all means, I mean anyone could come up with their own list, and you could put CD first. You can make your argument for CD being first and Tyreek too. But I think 9 out of 10 groups are going to put Tyreek first. I think the biggest difference is the receptions with Tyreek 119 and CD at 135, and them to only have a 50-yard difference. I think that's the biggest thing. So I think that just shows that Tyreek can make plays out of his receptions to get more yards, your yards after your catch. So I think that's, for me, that's the biggest difference between the two of those and why Tyreek's first and CD second.
Yeah. And as far as now our bronze award for this, Most people looking at these lists would think, oh, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nope. We're actually gonna take a rookie that came out of nowhere, Puka Nacua.
First time back on the game, dog. Bills, you see me. Yo.
Puka Nacua, like, out of nowhere, just took over for the Rams. The times where Cooper Kupp wasn't around, he stepped up. He didn't have as many touchdowns as the rest on the list for receivers here. Going from Tyreek down to Puka, it's 13, 12, 10, and Puka only has 6. However, Puka has less receptions than anybody else in the top 4 and still has similar yardage. He has actually, I think, around 30, 35-ish yards difference between him and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Puka also averaged more per catch than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Puka averaged 14.2 and St. Brown averaged 12.7. And the long for like longest catch also goes to Puka. I don't know like where this dude came from all of a sudden, but whoever
Draft.
was like scouting for this guy, they did a good job.
Yeah, because honestly, I would have never thought this guy being a potential NFL star, much less a rookie.
Yeah, I had never heard of him up until the season started and he started popping off.
Yeah, like when I started hearing his name getting called out more often by the announcers, I was like, wait. Hey, what's his name and who the heck is he? Had to look him up. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, wow. Did not
Yeah,
I think
it's
expect him.
I think it's so surprising because even though like we continue to discuss with the Rams not having a high expectation after last season into this season, I think the disbelief is you have Cooper Kupp on that team. And we've all seen how Kupp can perform year in and year out when he's healthy, of course. So I think that's to me is the biggest shocker is even when they're both on the field, they can both put up each 80 plus yards, 100 plus yards. We've seen it. Or if Cooper will put up this, but then Puka will put up that. Like it goes back and forth. But for him to still put up those numbers with a top 5, top 10 receiver on that squad with him is what is the most shocking thing in my eyes for him out of all of this. And to finish number 4, 4 is just as a receiver, as a rookie, with a wide receiver 1 on your team and like in Cooper Kupp is insane to see even happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yep.
It really is impressive, especially considering all these rookies that were drafted above him. Like preseason, you'd hear something about, oh, the Seahawks might take Smith and Jigba, or Zay Flowers might go to the Ravens. But yeah, I mean, you really didn't hear anything about Puka before the season started.
Yeah, Puka just flew under the radar for the most part. Like I said, I'd never heard of him up until this season. I never saw anything from him in college, so he kind of just appeared and
Yeah.
became a star.
Yeah, and just like everyone else, I mean, he had rough games. I mean, I think his biggest 2 big games, which is insane to see in his little league against the same team, is Arizona. The first game 4 for 26, and Arizona again later in the season. That actually looks like Thanksgiving weekend 4 for 27. So somehow, some way, Arizona out of everyone in the season that they had found some way to neutralize this man after having 120 yards here, 140, 160, 150. Like 2 weeks, both games they played him, they figured out how to neutralize him somehow.
Yeah. But I think that takes care of our running backs. Now, we're going to move on to defense. But this one's going to be a little different. No gold, silver, and bronze for this one. This one is more of each of us taking a defensive player we think deserves a little bit of recognition. And for me, I'm going to go with Alante Taylor from the Saints because for a handful of games earlier this season, and Paulo and I were sitting in a restaurant watching the game, it felt like every time a tackle was made, they were calling his name for at least 2 or 3 games. He somehow locked in the absence of some of our other players. He finished the season with a total of 75 tackles. He had 56 solo and 19 assists, and as well as, I believe, 2 interceptions. Not too bad for the kid out of Tennessee.
And it's about
Yeah.
time he actually got interceptions because last season as a rookie, he didn't get a single one. He came so close, but each time he tried to get one, he either got penalized or someone else got penalized or he dropped the ball. So I'm sure he's glad to have that monkey off his back.
Yeah, and I also have to mention that according to this list here on ESPN, he is tied for 9th place in the NFL in pass defense, and
Mm,
that's an accomplishment in my book.
yeah,
Yeah.
big one. And much need for the Saints considering how their season went this year.
Save it for
Yeah.
later, Chris.
With
Yeah,
all
I
this
know.
talk of
I know.
with all the talk of potentially trading Lattimore as well, like at least Alante Taylor is like proven that he maybe could fill that role of being like a top cornerback in the league. Like he's already well on his way there after this season. So I mean, if he
Yeah.
continues to ascend, he'd be one of the best players on this defense or on the team, to be honest.
Yep. Whoever wants to go next for their player, be my guest.
I'll go. I'll go next. So my player this year who deserves the spotlight is former Saints linebacker and current Lions linebacker Alex Anzalone. He finished his year with 85 solo tackles, which, according to stats, linebacker-wise, is number one in the categories, tied 12th overall. Um, he also had 3 sacks, no forced fumbles or interceptions, but overall, he's had a fantastic year. And the thing that really admired about him is his tenacity on the field. Like, I've watched a good amount of Lions games right after the Saints would either find new ways to win or find new ways to lose. But right afterwards, I would watch a Lions game, and he was all over the field. Like this, like everywhere a player would, the opposing player would go, he's there to stop him right there. Not bad for a former Saints player, and makes me really wish we still kept him. But that's a tale for another time. But overall, good job, Alex Anzalone. Um, I'm proud of you. So
Yeah, it's always nice to see former Saints doing well, especially ones that have left on like good terms and stuff.
yeah, that yeah, you know, I'm not gonna go on that tangent. I will save that for later.
I guess I'll go next. I wanted to highlight another Cowboy, honestly. Deron Bland had a great year this year. He set the NFL record for most pick sixes in a season. He had 5, which is honestly, it's crazy to think about because just thinking about how rare pick sixes are to begin with, having 5, you yourself as an individual having 5 in a season is crazy.
That's
But
insane.
yeah, congrats to him. I don't know how long the previous record stood for, but it would not surprise me if this record stood for quite a long time.
Right. Will?
So that was short and sweet.
Yep.
I don't know. I was kind of expecting a little more.
What more do you
Paulo,
want?
Paulo, keep it
I don't
brief.
know. Yeah. So I originally had one planned, and obviously, I'm gonna be biased. Like, don't get me wrong. Out of the 32 teams, there are definitely better players defensively, stat wise. But I'm gonna let my bias take over, especially after the season we've had. And I was originally going to go with Will Anderson as my pick, but I'm actually going to focus on a linebacker and Blake Cashman, who had a stellar season because we have lacked in the middle linebacker position and in that linebacker position for a while over the years. I mean, he had a combined total of 106 tackles, 56 solo, 50 assists, only 2 sacks, 1 INT, and 1 fumble recovery. But I'm picking him, and that's just regular season. That's not including postseason. Postseason, he had an additional sack, so 3 on the year, and add another 14 to that total, so 120 total tackles combined. But for us, that is a major key. That's what really helped our run defense this year. I mean, it showed when we held Henry to under 50 yards combined for both games we played on this season. So to me, Blake Cashman really stepped up and made a major impact defensively in that defense that was that whole team being under a rebuild. So for me, it goes to him and just the way he performed and really held that defense together and came out as a team captain there for him right there in the middle of the field.
Yeah. A lot of great defensive players this year. Now, for the next one, this one isn't a traditional award. Not at all.
Uh-oh.
This
no.
one, the majority of the next few awards we have are not specifically on the regular season. Some of these include postseason issues that some of these teams had. But for the first one here, this award, I don't think we ever actually gave it a proper name. For now, I'm just going to call it the award. This award goes to the team that went through the most injuries or the most significant injury. And I believe we all discussed this the other day and decided we're giving this to the Cleveland Browns, who went through how many quarterbacks this season?
Yeah, I mean, the main focus was four total quarterbacks on the season, not including additional injuries.
Not to mention Nick Chubb, who
Yep.
didn't play for almost the entire season after that gruesome leg injury.
Yeah.
Amari
Even
Cooper also went out
players-
for a game or two, if I remember correctly. It was a mess.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
Jerome-
Even players that
Jerome
weren't
Ford
out
as
for the
well.
season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerome Ford. You got Kareem Hunt, who was banged up. I don't know if he missed time, but he's banged up for 4 or 5 weeks.
Was not Njoku out for like a week or two as well, I believe.
I believe he was at the end of the season, but that's only because they
Yep.
sat him.
But we gave this award to the Browns because I mean they went through 4 quarterbacks, right? I mean you paid all that money for Deshaun, and then PJ Walker, and then Dorian Thompson, who's your rookie, to end up on Joe Flacco, an ex-AFC rival in your own division, to being on a team and taking it from what they were into the playoffs. You know, unfortunately, they lost that first round to the Texans, but to do what he did and have the games that he had with that team coming off the couch, you know, this just goes out to them being able to get as far as they did and perform the way they did through adversity. So, I mean, that just goes to show these other teams that are making excuses. Well, you know, we only had one of our key components. This team went through 4 quarterbacks, 4, and ended up on an old man, and still made the playoffs.
Yeah. And this isn't a football related injury, but I just remembered that this season also Njoku got burned with the fireworks or whatever.
Yeah.
You remember that?
The Browns could
Dude,
not
yes.
catch a break.
Even off the field, they're not safe.
Someone did not
Beast.
carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain as promised in Cleveland, and it shows.
Yeah.
Uh,
Honorable mention though to the Giants, who went through a few quarterbacks themselves this season while also losing Saquon Barkley, but they didn't go through as much as the Browns did. And a second honorable mention to the New York Jets, who, as we all know, got their franchise quarterback for all of 70-something seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. a whopping 4 plays, and we kid you not.
I would like to honorable mention the Chargers as well, who lost their quarterback, their number 1 and 2 receivers, and Eckler for like 5 or 6 weeks.
Right.
Just because significant people.
Right. Well, for
Can
the
we-
next one, I'm debating on which one to go with here. I think this next one we have all discussed, and I think honestly it shouldn't go to a specific player, but an entire team. And I want to see if y'all agree with this. Like, I think this award, the No Hands Award,
What happened to his hands?
for the most drop passes, should go to the entire Chiefs offense.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, who do we need to list? I mean, we could list just about everybody on that team.
The
Everyone
Chiefs,
maybe.
the Chiefs this season have had the most dropped passes, and that's
Yeah.
surprising considering the fact that they are the ones going to the Super Bowl. It
Yeah,
it
it's
baffles
shocking.
me. And if we have to
It's
give it to one player, we all know who to point to.
Looking
Yeah.
at you, Tony.
Kadarius
Tony.
Toney.
And then
I
you
mean,
had Christian Watson dropped a couple. Valdez Scantling missed. I specifically remember the one that was like bombed. Like he was home free if he would have caught it, but it was like one where he had to extend to catch it, and it wasn't like beyond his extension. He just Valdez Scantling is one of those people that need to be hit like in the chest area to catch the ball, and he can't like extend and catch as well. I remember they would have won that game if he would have caught that, and he just couldn't rein it in.
yeah, and I mean we're naming these guys, but let's not forget. I mean, yes, he's listed as a tight end, but honestly and obviously he's wide receiver one to Mahomes and Kelsey, who right there in the middle of the season, kind of endish, was having just a rough time himself with drop passes, even being as good as he is an elite, and a top five tight end of all time, possibly once his career is done. To even him dropping passes that 9 times out of 10 we've seen him make and make defenders miss. So this is like Jose. This is not just one specific. This was decided as the whole team themselves just couldn't get it together this year, but somehow managed to get to the Super Bowl. We're not going to say anything about
Again.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was, I was gonna ignore it, Will, but the last 2 times you've been speaking, you've been a robot.
Oh no.
I tried to tell him that before we started.
I was hoping it would just stop and go away, because every now and again Will sounds like a robot for like a word or two, but then it's fine. But he's straight up a robot. C-3PO for like 15 minutes.
Well, let's move on from that one. This next one is, again, it doesn't go to any specific player in my mind. This is just an overall award, whether it be to a team, a player, whoever you want to give it to. You can give it to an entire organization if you want. Well, we've all decided that this one, the Choke Award, for the team or player that choked the worst this season, goes to the Dallas Cowboys for that god-awful performance in the playoffs. One and done at home in Dallas against the Green Bay Packers.
how about them cowgirls?
How about him?
Ugh.
That's
Ooh.
got to be so discouraging to know that you've got a really good team and then just, I don't know, take a dump in the wild card
Yeah,
round.
you have one of the best teams in football at the time and get murdered by the 7th seed Packers, who were struggling all year and up until the last game of the season didn't know if they were going to make it in or not.
Yeah.
It's straight up embarrassing. Like, now, of course, I collected quite a nice gift at the end of that game, but we're not going to talk about that too much. But but overall, the Cowboys straight up choked. Like, in no world should the number 2 team in the playoffs lose to the number 7 team. Yes, it has happened, but the Cowboys this year were just really good, and they just threw it away like it was candy. Like it was pathetic. Like I have never seen a team as good as the Cowboys in recent memory look so good in the regular season, only to completely choke it away to the probably the worst team in the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
yikes.
As a few of us agree, there's a few of us who are Cowboys haters, and it's not specifically like the team. A lot of it has to do with the fan base and that they're just delusional and think they're going to win the Super Bowl every year. I will say this, that this year, honestly, the whole year, they weren't that bad. And then since this loss, I haven't really heard anything from the Cowboys fans. I think this year broke them, to be honest.
And
You know,
when
you're
Paulo
right.
says
'Cause
there's a couple people, Paulo is referring to himself and Chris. Let's just make that evident. I mean, you've heard it through the podcast throughout the year. It is him and
Hey,
Chris when he says a
Jose's
couple
halfway there.
people. Mm, mm,
I do make
he's a
fun
little
of the
more
Cowboys, but I
biased.
don't hate them.
Yes.
I can't
we,
hate somebody
I
who's
will
gone through
always
that.
hate them. Just like I
Uh,
always hate the Falcons, Bucks, and Panthers, or should I
yeah,
say,
well,
Oh,
Chris
you're
being
no
on my team
clown
is
you're
just a given
Buccaneers.
biased.
because Chris is a certified professional hater.
Gonna say I'm a Saints fan first, football fan second.
I am the reverse. Well, we have one more award left, and I'm gonna go last on this one. This is the last one we have for each of us to individually give to someone we choose. And I'm gonna go last because I'm gonna rant. Y'all go ahead and decide amongst yourselves who should go first.
What's the topic?
The
Yeah,
award
what is
is
it?
the NFL's
This man's
biggest
gonna say
disappointment.
this man's gonna go through this whole
Ooh.
speech and everything and not give us
Ooh.
a topic and then just disappear.
The NFL's biggest disappointment. Are we talking team or player?
Could be either.
Okay.
All right. You want to go first, Paulo?
Yeah,
'Cause
I'll
I
go
don't.
first.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, you know, I'm tempted to take the Jets because of how much was behind them. Like they were on Hard Knocks. People were talking about them. Like with Rodgers, maybe they'll take their division and whatnot. But I'm not gonna go with the Jets just because of the Rodgers injury happening in like the first however many seconds of the game. Um, I'm gonna go with the Bears. And this isn't necessarily like the biggest disappointment, but it's a personal disappointment. Like I was expecting the Bears to be better. You know, they got DJ Moore, who is a good receiver. You know, Justin Fields has been playing a couple years. You'd think they'd figure some stuff out. I liked the additions that they made on the defensive side, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, who both had good years, by the way. But I don't know. It just Bears fans are just in a labyrinth of suffering. They will never escape. And I don't know if it's a coaching thing. Like I thought I knew, but I don't. Is it a coaching thing? Is it a Justin Fields thing? I don't know. Is the Bears organization just not destined to make the playoffs ever again? I don't know. But it seems like they just range from varying levels of mid for the past few years. And even though there was expectations for them to, maybe they're a dark horse to take the division. You remember that take that we had?
Oh God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
They
remember
were
that.
not, in fact. They were not. So I don't know. That's one that comes to mind in disappointments. And it's not like we were expecting them to be a Super Bowl team. It's just I was expecting them to be, better, and they just aren't again. But yeah, that's it.
Oh. All right, my turn. As y'all all know, I am a passionate Saints fan to the hardcore, to the heart. And this this year, I was led on to believe that all we simply needed was a quarterback, and maybe things would get better. Maybe add a receiver here and there. But I figured, well, Michael Thomas is coming back. Look, Chris Olavi is with us right now, and Rashid Shaheed also with us, who looked very promising the year before. I was like, okay, we might have a good shot at probably the worst division in the NFC, or should I say, the worst division in the entire NFL at this point. I was wrong, and I earlier this season in my pre-division winner pickings or whatever you want to call it, I picked the Saints to win the division by a landslide. I was completely wrong, and they are my choice this year. And this was a hard pick because I was debating between the Saints or the Giants, because I also initially said the Giants were a dark horse to maybe run the division this year because I figured they were due next, considering they had a really good year the year before. The Giants just absolutely got smashed to pieces, but I'm more aggravated with the Saints because the Saints completely did the complete opposite of what I was hoping for. They sucked on offense, especially at quarterback. I'm looking at you, Derek Carr. I got a lot to say about you, pal, but I'm not going to get into it right this minute. I'm also looking at you, Dennis Allen, who you shouldn't have a job to this day. You, sir, need to be fired. But I've already said my words on that, so I'll move on. With that being said, we did not win the division. We didn't even make the playoffs. This team straight up disappointed me once again, and therefore they are my choice of this year's most disappointed team of this season. And honorable mentions would be the Giants.
Will? I think Will died.
Will's gone.
No,
Sort
no,
of hurt
no.
him.
No. I'm just thinking here. I'm trying to think back teams, divisions, individual players, really on what could be the biggest disappointments in the league this season. And I think I've come to the conclusion that it's got to be Daniel Jones, honestly. Uh, and this is just my opinion. I mean, you went out and you paid Daniel all this money to have the season that he had. I mean, yes, injuries, but there wasn't much he was doing before that either. Like you thought, you found your franchise quarterback, you made him the highest paid quarterback at the time, gave him a massive contract, and just for him to spit and sputter and do absolutely nothing. Like I'm not exactly sure what the Giants saw in him with this contract or what they thought they were going to accomplish, but it's just he's just not the answer. He's not the guy. Maybe it could be the offense he's in. I mean, maybe it could be the coaches. I don't really know. I mean, for the games he played, 900 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. What atrocity! Like, just terrible. And I mean, that's over the spread of 2, 4, 6, 7 weeks. Like I said, yes, injuries. I'll give him that. But even in the games he did play, just multiple interceptions a game. You know, just no touchdowns in 3 of those games, 4 of those games, like no touchdowns thrown, just absolute atrocity.
All right, is everybody done with theirs?
Yes. And hurry before I go on another tangent about Dennis Allen, Derek Carr.
Y'all should not be surprised by who my biggest disappointment is. I've said it time and time again. I've ranted about him plenty times. Stefon Diggs.
You goddamn bum!
My God.
I saw that coming.
Let it go already.
No, wait.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. In the beginning of the season, the first half of the season, he was doing great. He was getting around 80, 90, 100 yards a game up until the Denver game. After that Denver game, it all just came crashing down. He was dropping passes left and right. He didn't get over 50 yards receiving for over a month at one point. at this, looking at the stats here, he went 5 games here out of, it looks like 7 or 8 with less than 50 yards. Against KC the first time, 4 out of 11 targets. Against Philadelphia in that overtime game, 6 out of 11 targets. And to cap it all off, the game against the Chiefs in the playoffs this past week. Oh boy. 3 of
Yeah.
8 for 21 yards, and he had a chance. He was wide open downfield. Allen lobs the ball to him, and he just drops it in a wide open field. If he caught that, that's a touchdown, and the Bills have a legitimate chance to win that game. Stephon Diggs, you're on the list.
Not the forever list.
And with that, that takes care of all the awards. I'm gonna leave that there before I rant for another half hour. But
And for those who don't know, the list Jose is talking about is the list of players that have been blackballed from his future fantasy football team forever and ever. Amen.
This is true.
it ain't even just that, it's just players I don't like. Diggs was on there a while back. He got off of it, and now he's back on.
Sometimes you think you trust a person, and after they apologize, nope.
It's not even apologizing. He was on the list because of like his attitude and stuff. I just didn't like him as a player. And then I started like, okay, maybe he's not so bad. And then I give him a chance, and that happens. I will not be burned again.
And I don't blame you.
But that is the end of the awards.
I did want to bring this up real quick. So with the Seahawks projected to hire the Ravens DC, that only
yes.
leaves the Commanders position open because they did say that the Lions OC is not going there after all.
Yeah,
So-
Ben Johnson is going to stay with the Lions.
Yeah, so the Commanders, do we think it's going to be Belichick or Mike Vrabel or someone else?
So actually, it's funny you bring this up, and I forget who it was, but they actually had an idea of who their head coach was going to be. Yeah, I'm looking for the article right now, but I just saw it. Where did he go? I'm gonna try to find it, but they did have a potential. Dan, not Dan Quinn. Aaron Glenn. I'm sorry, Aaron Glenn was his
Oh,
name.
yeah.
Who's that again?
He's the Lions D lineman coach or something like that. I can't remember.
Oh, so they said we want a lion. Give us a
Yeah,
lion.
right.
Any lion. We'll take any lion.
Just give us something. Like y'all had a great season. We'll get a little piece of that.
Yeah. Well, that honestly, everything is worked out in a way that I'm happy with. Because you know what this means, right? This means that next year, if the Saints have another sucky season, Dennis Allen will be gone because there's no way we're doing another year of just terrible. And Mike Vrabel will still be available without a head coaching job. So we could still potentially get him.
You really want that guy,
You're
don't
getting
you?
your hopes too
I
high,
do.
Paulo.
I know, I am, but
Uh.
I want him. Give him to me.
God, Jesus, give it to me right now.
And speaking of the Saints, real quickly, they still have yet to find their new offensive coordinator, and they better find one soon because the current ones that are available are not dropping like flies. They found new jobs with other teams, so they better hurry up and find someone quick.
Yeah.
Snail
Real
pace.
quick, speaking of the Saints and coaching positions, keep your grubby hands off of my coaches. Quarterback coach
But-
Gerard Johnson decided to stay in Houston, as well as Bobby Slowick coming back
come on.
as the offensive coordinator. So keep your grubby hands away.
No, hold up. You know, sharing is caring.
Yes, sharing. You can take those L's and go away.
Oh, shut up, man.
We're winning over here.
Ugh,
Well,
rude. It's rude.
before we sign off, we have one more thing to do. The Super Bowl is set. Kansas City versus the San Francisco 49ers. Who we taking,
Ugh.
boys?
Honestly, I absolutely hate this matchup, but because I hate the Niners more than the Chiefs, I am picking the Chiefs out of spite. Because here's my reasoning behind that. It's like normally I wouldn't have a thing against the Niners, but there's this one particular playoff game I remember back in 2011. A certain tight end named Vernon Davis. I think Jose and Paulo might know what I'm
Oh,
talking
you're
about here.
holding a grudge from that
Mm,
long ago?
oh yeah, I still hold it against those bums. Like, um, and then there's been other circumstances here and there that weren't like in the playoffs, but they still
Beto, if you're
hurt me to
listening,
this
close your
day.
ears.
Wait, what?
I was saying if Beto's listening, he better close his ears.
Sorry, Beto. If you are listening to this, I'm sorry, my brother. I still love you, but screw you, Niners. I hope y'all lose by 50, but honestly, that's not going to happen. It's a Super Bowl. Um, but let's get into a realistic point of view, not my petty self. So the Niners have a very good defense, and the Chiefs also have a good defense. Maybe not. The Chiefs may have a lesser stellar defense compared to the Niners, but at the same time, it just seems like they're a very opportunistic defense. So they're going to give everything Brock Purdy and the gang have against all, in this Super Bowl. And it seems like he's been paying them off very well. I've been picking against him every single week in this playoff season, and each time the Kansas City Chiefs just find new ways to win. And I can't for the life of me figure that out. I mean, for one, I mean, I knew they would win at home, but I wasn't sure how good they would play on the road, and they've seemed to excel expectations on the road. So I'm picking the Chiefs because I feel like they just have the upper edge. I don't think the Niners stand a chance. Um, they're gonna. I'm not saying it's gonna be a blowout for the Chiefs. It's gonna be a very close game. Because the last time the Chiefs and Niners played against each other, which was back in I believe 2019, it was a classic showdown, and of course, quarterbacks were different at the time. Well, the Niners' quarterback was different. I believe the Niners had the Raiders' current quarterback. I forgot his name already, but
Garoppolo.
Garoppolo. Thank you. Um, but this time they have a young, upcoming hotshot quarterback, Brock Purdy, who has so far done really well this playoff season, despite losing, well, not losing specifically. He had one or two games where he lost a really important player to a game-ending injury, and he had to make do with what he had. So, but again, I'm choosing the Chiefs because I just feel like they had the hot hand at this point, and I'm picking them to win by 3.
I think I've got to agree with you there, Chris. I As much as we've picked against the Chiefs this season, let's look back at it. The Ravens absolutely curb stomped the 49ers to turn around this past game and get curb stomped by the Chiefs. I don't see the Niners winning this. I really don't.
I
Not
don't
after
either.
that. I'm going to take Chiefs by 7.
Well, I will take the 49ers.
Ugh,
I think this is about
no.
matchups. And you can say what you will. If like a one score game is a curb stomp against the Ravens, then fine, but we saw the 49ers look pretty invincible at times this season, and I was picking the Chiefs. I was picking the Chiefs in the middle of the season, and I said if I pick the Chiefs one more time and they lose, I'm not picking them anymore, and I am not picking them anymore. The Chiefs are going down. I refuse.
I don't think you're gonna get this one, Paulo.
I think I will. I think y'all are willing another Chiefs Super Bowl victory into existence, and I will not be part of it.
As much as I don't want it to happen, I honestly think the Chiefs are going to pull out the win.
I think so too. Will, your thoughts? You,
I'm
you
going
still
with
there?
no. I gotta agree with Paulo here. Like,
Let's go.
Oh, come on.
listen, and this is just not going against Jose and Chris at all. Uh, and the group knows that me and Paulo have a ton of disagreements. I think me and Paulo argue the most in this group, honestly, about all
I
kinds
feel
of
like
topics, especially
not on
Daniel
the podcast
Sorensen.
though.
Daniel Sorensen, my boy.
Yeah,
Definitely not
well,
on the podcast, but it's a
that
lot of
was
arguments.
before. That was last year.
But I'm tired of the Chiefs. Like I'm sick of it. Like 6 straight AFC championships. Like they're good, but at some point, like they're not that good. They're not. Like this year, I think it proved it. But they get bailed out, and as much as people don't want to acknowledge it, they get bailed out by the refs a lot, and it shows.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
that's another discussion. But I'm sick of them. It went from being the Patriots with Brady to now Mahomes, and now the new dynasty of the AFC. I guess you could say that they're gonna get to the AFC Championship every year. Like it's sickening, and the amount of just they force the commercials. They just force everything about the Chiefs down your throat. Like you don't see these other star receivers, quarterbacks, anything doing what they're doing or being forced out there. But besides that, that's just hate towards the Chiefs. From a
Yep.
football standpoint, now that that's out of the way, I feel better.
Yeah.
I do think the Niners
It's
defense is better than the Chiefs. Like, don't get me wrong, the Chiefs have had a pretty good defense this year that has held them into games. It showed against the Ravens. Like they had all the answers for Lamar last week. So I'm not knocking the Chiefs defense whatsoever. Even with the season they have, like they held the number one team in the AFC to 10 points and came out with that victory. I'm not knocking it. My issue with them is their offense. We've seen it time and time again throughout the season. The drops, the run game hasn't been all that great. It's had its moments, uh, but I think the Niners defense is going to be too much for that offense. I think it's going to be close, but it's going to be a very defensive battle. I think it's going to be a lot like I think it's going to be a lot like the KC and Baltimore game. Honestly, I don't know if it's going to be high scoring, shootout by any means, but it's going to be very defensive. But then again, on top of their defense, the Niners have a powerful offense. They're getting a whole week to rest. Both teams are, which is good for Debo and Ayuk and McCaffrey. Like that's great for those guys. They need it, especially Debo. Debo played hurt last week, and they still won. It was close, but I think with the week of rest that they're going to get, the chaos that they can cause if they get that McCaffrey going early, because then Casey's going to have to focus that. You've got Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle just sitting there in the pass game waiting. So I think all in all, side by side, that and I don't like either team, but I do think the Niners win this game. I think it's their time, it's their year. The way the season that Purdy's had, like it is now, it is their like right now for them to win.
This is
It's got to be the Niners, man. It just statistically and side by side, it's got to be them.
let's see, that's the problem. Is like I said with the Bills and Chiefs matchup last week, was certain because I was certain the Bills would win because they had better weapons and better statistics overall than the Chiefs on offense specifically, and the Chiefs still found a way to win. Now, granted, there were some factors. We all know that, and you already mentioned those factors. So I don't know. It's just that's what I'm
Specifically,
hesitant to pick.
factors wearing black and white.
Yeah, one's looking like zebras out there. But anyway,
yeah.
that's that's the problem I have with picking against the Chiefs is that they even when I pick against them, they still win, and that's I just can't pick against them. I'd have to pick them this time.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong.
Oh yeah, same. Like I'm sick of hearing about the Chiefs too, especially with all the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey love story going on around here. I'm also sick of that too. But sadly, they got the upper hand and the fiery hand as well. So I just don't see any way the Chiefs could possibly lose. Bless you.
Thanks.
Well, we're split. The story of the season, for the most part, with this group.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
It is rare that we all agree on something, but
It has to be
that's
an obvious one for us to all agree on it.
yeah. And even then, we might get it wrong.
Yep.
Yep.
But that's it for the season. We've got one more, I think we got in us before we give it a break before the draft. But
Yeah.
that's just gonna be a little recap to check and see how we did from our predictions from episode 1. Spoiler alert, we didn't do great.
No,
Yeah.
not very good.
But we will return after the Super Bowl. Paulo,
Yes.
do you have anything to take us out with?
So I put my hands up to play my song,
Oh,
the butterflies
no.
fly away.
Fire Dennis
And I
Allen.
Nod in my head like, yeah.
Moving my hips
like,
like, yeah.
yeah.